Hello, and welcome back to the Cooper Lyden Sneaker Review Podcast. Today we have a pretty interesting sneaker we're going to be reviewing. I'm pretty excited about it. All of our football fans should be pretty excited about it. Let's bring it out. This right here is a all-white, heavily used Jordan 1 that belonged to Aaron Rodgers, and I got it by stealing it off of his foot. He was just leaving dinner outside New Jersey. I think he lives in New Jersey now. He's current quarterback of the New York Jets. He's leaving dinner. I ran up and got close to his feet, lifted up his foot, yanked it off, and he didn't really stop me. I think the whole situation wasn't that worth it to him. I took it off his foot, and he said, "Hey, why would you do that?" He yelled as I ran down the cold streets of Hoboken, New Jersey. He said, "Hey, why would you do that?" And I yelled back real quick, "Oh, my name's Cooper Lyden and I do a sneaker review podcast. This is going to be pretty cool for me." And he just repeated what he said again. He just said, "Please stop. My foot will get cold. I'm a quarterback in the National Football League. If my foot gets frostbite, it could hurt my team. Many people are hopeful about my team. Please stop." And I said, "Aaron, I'm not going to do that." By this time, I'm still running, so I'm about a football field away from him. But he didn't come back. He didn't come for me. I'm sure he's a quick guy, but he's a quarterback. I'm not very familiar with Aaron Rodgers' play. I don't know if he's a big running quarterback, but he definitely wasn't the night that I got to his feet and took his shoe. Interesting thing, the guy wears a 9. He wears a size 9 shoe, men's, which I think most football players probably, most of their shoe size probably even just starts around 12. And goes up to, God knows what. But pretty small feet for an NFL quarterback. I think the guy's also like 6'3". I mean, he was pretty tall when I saw him. I didn't get a read on him, obviously. I was just trying to get the shoe for you guys. But, I mean, in terms of the shoe itself, yeah, I mean, it's rough in there. There's a lot of tea in that guy's body, so it doesn't smell great, and honestly, the condition is surprisingly bad because he had a nice outfit, and the rest of it looked good. But I mean, I don't know if you can see. Maybe we'll have our producers, which we don't have, zoom in. But there's some sauce that's dried on him. I'm not really sure what kind of restaurant he was in. If it was maybe a Mexican or Indian, but it's sort of a red. So it could be a hot sauce. Could be a curry. I'm not really sure. A lot of wear and tear on him, though. He seems to have worn these shoes for, I mean, it could be close to a year. So I guess I have more questions than answers when it comes to this particular shoe. Why Aaron Rodgers is not buying new shoes, or why new shoes are not being given to him by whatever, shoe company sponsors him. Why he doesn't even seem to have more than one pair of shoes. But it does elucidate something. When I was running away, he said, "Please, those are my favorite shoes. I want to hold on to them for as long as I can. I will give you free shoes. Please don't take them." And then I stopped. I said, "Really?" And he said, "Yeah, once again, I'm about a football field and a half away by now, still running, never stopped." He said, "Yes, I'll give you free shoes." And I thought for a moment. I said, "No, you won't." And I just kept running down that dark street and hailed a cab. I didn't really hail it. It was driving down, because there's not a huge ton of cabs going around Hoboken. I mean, really none. But it was driving around. I stopped it in the street. Funny enough, the guy already had a passenger inside, which is always a problem. If anybody's ever taken a cab, you know how that goes. So, he's screaming. I open the back, yank that person out. Take out a gun, which I did not need to use to acquire the shoe. Luckily, that shows a lot of restraint and peacefulness by Aaron Rodgers. Thanks for that. But anyway, dragged the passenger out of the car and just proceed to put that gun to the taxi driver's head and tell him drive as fast as you can anywhere. Lo and behold, the guy drives about as fast as he can right back to where I was, then tells me to get out. I get out, Aaron Rodgers is still there. He sees me, I see him. I start running the other way. I'm not going to bore you guys with it, but about the same exact conversation ensued. And I said, A-Dog. Ron for the Key and Peele fans. I'm not giving you the shoe back. Okay, Chief? Okay? Or should I say Jet? He's afraid of the Chiefs. Listen, and I got in his face and I was like, listen, you'll never, Mahomes has been in the league less time than you and he's already eclipsed you, He could be the greatest quarterback we've ever seen. I mean, of course, all hail Brady, but what Mahomes is doing and his talent alone really is a spectacle to see on the field. And that's why I do feel bad about last month's shoe review where I did steal Patrick Mahomes' Kobe 3s. But, that is what it is. I stole Patrick's shoe and he went, hey, man, if you could just not steal my shoe, I just wouldn't like it if you stole my shoe, Come on, don't steal my shoe, man. But I did, and he laughed. He giggled, you know what I mean? He might be watching the pod. I've gotten some messages from him where he said, hey, man, you mentioned your podcast a lot when you were stealing my shoe, so I actually looked it up with the plan of finding out more about you personally so then I could file a lawsuit in your state and to your exact name, which you put in the title of your podcast, so that was easy. But then I started watching, and I got to say, you're a young guy coming up, and, he's, I think, 26 to 28. I'm 24. And he goes, I have such an amazing life. I'm only about 4 years older than you, and you are such an irreparable loser. You've really done nothing with your entire life, but spent a weird amount of money to produce a still very low-quality podcast. But if you need the shoe and that will help, then in some weird way I'm happy to support. And then after I got that message, I got a notification that he's subscribed. So, Pat, if you're still watching, I know there's been a hiatus to the podcast. Thanks for tuning in again. That actually really means a lot. And the connections that I've been able to make with NFL football players by stealing their shoes has really been great. Needless to say, the podcast has been on a hiatus for about a month and a week. And that was because I did try and steal Troy Polamalu's shoe, who, although has not been in the league, dominant Steelers, I think safety or linebacker, forgive me if I'm incorrect. Although he hasn't been in the league for a few years, really still a dominant citizen, might not be a dominant player anymore, but really a dominant citizen, and just beat the brakes off of me. And the funniest thing was, it was just a Vans old school, it was a really chill shoe. But yeah, just beat the brakes off me, so I had to spend some time in a Pittsburgh hospital. I was in a coma for most of it, didn't have my ID on me. They didn't know who I was. My family thought I was missing. Got a whole cross-country search going. You know how that is. It's just content creation kind of stuff. It's kind of stuff that happens when you're trying to make content. So it is what it is. But no, the podcast has been off for about a month and a week more. Because I had personal problems and I got sad and then decided that the podcast that nobody listens to did not matter for this month. And that is very unfair to my fan because I owe the world to my fan, and I'm very sorry for letting down my fan. But Sam, we're back. How about that? You know what I mean? I mean, this is an army of few, but I like to believe that it's strong. You know what I mean? I like to believe that this podcast is like the early days of the Union Army, where the Confederates might have some good forts and they might have some insane people fighting for them. We might be up against a lot, but I believe that my perseverance and fortitude will bring us to a holy victory. And I hope one day that this podcast will reap me the same benefits that the victory of the Civil War reaped for Ulysses S. Grant, that being the office of president. I would like to be the president one day, and a lot of people like to go about that by getting a relevant college degree, by getting advanced degrees, by working as a lawyer, by starting in lower-level political positions, city council, and then moving up to a Senate, and then eventually making a name for yourself as a politician. And I don't believe in that. I believe that rhetoric, that broadcasting, that transparency and honesty is what will get me to the office of the President of the United States. And so that's the reason we do it, and that's also the reason I can't take a month off, and I guarantee that this will not happen again. And if it does happen again, then you can guarantee that I am dead, that I have ceased to live. I did get a message from a guy about a week into the hiatus of the podcast where he said, "Hey, man, I noticed the podcast hasn't come out for about a week. I also noticed that on the last episode, you talked a whole lot about killing yourself, just making sure everything's okay." And I responded with a very kind, reassuring message of, all good, appreciate it, thanks for the message. Because I don't know, I don't think I've really acquired any fans with this podcast, but I think I have acquired people who somehow stumble upon it and then go, oof, this guy is really on the edge. I think he might kill himself. I'm going to keep watching, not really out of a pleasure point. I don't really enjoy the podcast, but I'm going to keep watching just sort of to keep tabs on this suicidal boy, which in my eyes is much more riveting of a podcast than something like a guy who's funny and competent and has very interesting takes on the world that we live in. I think the most interesting take on the world that we live in that a person can have is, I'm going to kill myself. I think that's a very interesting take because a lot of people look around at the world. They look around at love, hate, destruction, loss of love, inequality, hope, beauty, sex, race cars, Monaco, and they say, I'll give it a shot. And I think it's much more interesting to look around, realize you're on a small planet, in a small galaxy, in a vast, vast universe, and just say no. I'm sort of the Nancy Reagan of life, is you can always say no. You should never feel pressured to be alive, okay? Do not let peer pressure get you to keep living a life that you do not want to live. You need to be steadfast, and you need to believe in yourself, and be aware that you are capable of more, which sometimes is ending your own life. Sometimes the most impactful thing people do in their entire life is kill themselves. I think if you do kill yourself, that kind of is like the most impactful thing you did. But it's interesting when you think about people who did do great things in their life and then killed themselves. Like whoa, it's funny? I was going to say Kurt Cobain. I almost said Courtney Love because she probably killed him. But that's also pretty mean to say. I don't think that's really true. It is interesting. It's like, I guess Kurt Cobain, his impact, his music had a bigger impact. But killing himself had maybe an almost equal impact to all the music he ever made. But I also think that the impact of him killing himself really just speaks to the impact of his music, because the only reason him killing himself was such a big deal was because of his music. So really for him, killing himself was sort of a cherry on top of quite a life well lived. A lot of people would say that a guy that kills himself did not have a life well lived. But that is also to say that Nevermind is a bad album, and that's patently untrue. So, did Kurt Cobain live a good life? Those are things that we're wondering on the Cooper Lyden Shoe Review podcast. Those are things we want to figure out for me, for you, for everybody, you know? Philip Seymour Hoffman, what was more important? Boogie Nights or killing himself? You could say him killing himself was more important because now we don't get to see him act anymore. So it kind of becomes the most important thing because you fucked up all the acting. And now all we have left is Cooper Hoffman, who's a real, a real lovable being of a guy, but, can he be his dad? I don't know. It's not fair to put on him. But anyone out there thinking of killing themselves, before you kill yourself, I would pursue a career in the arts, because chances are, if you're thinking about killing yourself, you're at least a little bit interesting. Which is kind of, you should tell that to people who want to kill themselves. You should be like, listen, man, I know you want to kill yourself, but the fact that you want to kill yourself makes you a pretty neat guy. Your perspective on life of I would like to end it is unique. You're not the only one. But if you talk to a lot of regular people, a lot of normal people, they have not been truly suicidal. Which to me, and all of the people that I know and like, is very surprising. But a lot of people don't want to kill themselves. I forget that most people don't. And most people have never. And that is correct. And that, listen, there are tons of interesting people that don't want to sever from this mortal coil. Sure. But I'm saying if you do, maybe write a song about it and see if it's fucking awesome. Because if it is, it's not going to stop you from killing yourself. But you could put it out and some people would listen, and maybe you could be a cult figure of some kind. You know what I mean? It's the Daniel Johnston route, is that I would like to kill myself, but first I will write a song. And then he did, and they were pretty good. You know what I mean? It'd be really interesting if Bob Dylan killed himself right now. You know what I mean? Because I don't know about his mental state. I mean, I guess some people would assume maybe that he's a depressive guy because he's Bob Dylan. But I don't really think there's really a lot of things in Bob Dylan that point to any kind of depression. I think it's like him being a cool guy that smokes cigarettes and is brooding, and maybe a lot of his fans want to kill themselves would make you think that. I'm a big fan. I want to kill myself, But Bob Dylan, if you really think about it, it's like he's pretty steadfast and strong and assured in himself and his actions. He ran away from home multiple times. I think he ran away like 10 or 7, and on the 10th or 7th, he didn't come back. And that was when he was 14, and he went from, small town in Minnesota to, I think, Minneapolis, where he met, maybe that's where he met Woody Guthrie, or he met him when he went to New York, but, ran away to a big city, then ran away to a bigger city, New York, and then became one of, if not the most, or the best, subjective, but, maybe the best lyricists and musicians of the last 100 years. You know what I mean? So I guess that would answer the question on the Cooper Lyden sneaker review podcast of whether or not Bob Dylan wants to kill himself. I would wager no. I would also wager no because his breakup songs are not like, hey, I'm such a piece of shit. A lot of his breakup songs are like, don't think twice, it's all right. It's like, you wasted my time, but I'm not mad at you. Like, that's like a remarkably healthy opinion of a breakup if you feel that your time was wasted. If you're like, listen, man, we really dicked around, and I'm sure I wasted some of your time too. But I'm not going to mention that in the song. But, you wasted my time, but also, I don't hate you for it. I don't hold on to that grudges. I'm just going to keep going and being awesome. That's actually kind of the exact same perspective as like insane alpha male podcasters that are like, if you get broken up with, it's just a fucking waste of your time. Just get up and keep going. Don't think twice. It's all right. Like that. Wow, I think we're actually finding out that Bob Dylan might be the perfect encapsulation of the alpha male or the sigma male. I don't know what those guys are onto now. I always hear there's always new memes or new podcast clips coming out of some insane guy being like, so the alpha male seeks domination for his leadership. The sigma male shows leadership and is then followed. So I don't, am I correct on that? I would like to know. I don't think I have any fans that are interested in that or would care at all or really have any knowledge of that. But if one of you distraught, probably middle school boys out there is watching the podcast, first off, I'd probably stop. This isn't good for you. But if you're one of those weird people, adults, there's a lot of for some reason, I assume that the only people that could ever take a guy on a mic who's just buff seriously, those guys that are like, you've never heard of them, but they're like, I'm a billionaire. Or they're not even a billionaire. They're just like, I'm an entrepreneur. And you don't really know how much money they have, but they have like a Corvette. So you're like, I guess it's more than $30,000, I assume the only people that take those guys seriously could be a middle school boy. But I think the really scary part is that there are grown men. Like men who even pay all of their bills, and they don't have a lot, but they pay all, like they're like 35-year-old men, and they listen to other random men tell them how to live their life, which seems crazy to me. That being said, I have a therapist, so maybe a lot of people would think that's the exact same thing. I don't, because he has a degree in psychology, at least. But then again, I don't know what you learn in a degree in psychology. For all I know, when you get a degree in psychology, you could walk in every class and they'd be like, hey, so if you want to be a therapist, just lie to them. Just lie. And then here are some words we'll give you to help the lies. But this is all a lie, but you can make some decent scratch. I don't know. I don't know. I'm going through a hard time. I almost thought about quitting therapy and just being like, do I need some guy in my life tell me what to do? And then I thought about it for a couple seconds, and I was like, well, it couldn't hurt, because his advice is pretty neutral and pretty agreeable. It's a lot of like, hey, don't drink all the fucking time. You will get sad. And I hear a guy tell that to me, and I go, that's a really interesting point, Andrew. I really like what you have to say about this concept. And that ain't his real name. I'll never tell. But, yeah, I don't know. Having a therapist is okay, But now I only see the guy every 2 weeks because, so it's too much money. My parents fucking pay for it, okay? That's what I was embarrassed to say, that my parents pay for me to go to a guy and not get sad. But also, if you have the money in America and you have a sad child, you can save a ruined Christmas of a suicide by just shelling out some dough to make sure that kid maintains. So that's what they're doing. But now I only see the guy every 2 weeks. And he was like, yeah, usually when you do every 2 weeks, a lot of therapy sessions can kind of be like catch up, and you don't really get, you're just trying to catch up on what I've missed from your life. So it's hard to get deep. So now I just go into therapy and I'm like, here's what's happened, like in 5 minutes. And then I'm like, okay, and here's why I want to die. And then he's like, this is a beautiful therapy session. This is the most beautiful therapy I have ever seen. This man is so sad. He's so sad. You should have seen my Nona's depression. My Nona was so sad. She would make the sauce, and she would take a razor blade and cut herself and put it into the marinara. And it tasted beautiful because the blood of an old woman who does not want to be here is a deep flavor. You talk about deep flavors. It's kind of mixing into a Spanish accent. I don't do Italian accents a lot, which I should get better at, because that's really a hot ticket accent to be better at. My nonna was okay, now we're going to get kicked off SNL with that accent. We gotta, what do Italians sound like? Mario. Okay, we gotta start. Mario. Make it marinara. You cannot, don't, mozzarella. You cannot put mozzarella on your penis. It will make you gay for cheese. And this is the greatest fear of every Italian. That you will want to fuck the cheese so hard that you will no longer want the touch of a woman. This is the saddest part of an Italian man's life, where he must decide between Parmigiano and a woman. How can this decision be made? How can one be happy with only one? This is the choice that you must make. Yeah, I don't think that sounded Italian at all. But it was really beautiful. If you kind of break it down. But anyway, gosh, to be a depressed Italian must be so much cooler. I feel like American depression is just, I don't know, I think it's like the lack of like history and culture, you know what I mean? It's like, especially as like a white American depression, you just walk around, you're like, oh, I'm sad. But we're cooler with it because we'll like walk into our office with a gun and kill ourselves in front of everybody, which I think is kind of our thing. But then again, kind of seems like something an Italian would do. But I don't know, I think an Italian would also be like, I must shut myself out. They will not find my body for 4 days. I will hide in a cave. I will sit in the cave until I die. I will not eat until I will sit in the cave and die. I will chain myself to a rock with a lock I do not have the combination for, and I would kill myself. It just seems more interesting, you know what I mean? It's also like, if you're like sad and wherever the fuck the cliffs of Dover are, is that just England? Is it just in England? I think it's just in England. I thought it was maybe Scotland or Ireland. Northern or Southern Ireland. Don't mean to lump you guys together. It's a full Irish viewership, I found out. It's all Irish, mostly Northern. But yeah, like if you're sad in Britain, you can jump off the cliffs of Dover, I mean, that was the end of Harold and Maude. I mean, he didn't really jump, but you know what I mean? It's picturesque. What can you jump off in America? I mean, you got the Freedom Tower. I don't know if anybody's killed themselves in the Freedom Tower. I think that is so fucking rude to do that nobody would do it. If you jump off the Freedom Tower, which if you don't know is the new 9/11 building, which is what I call the World Trade Centers, the 9/11 buildings. They only did one this time. Dumb idea in my mind. I think listen, the Twin Towers, they get hit by planes, they go down. Country comes together, start an unending war for no reason, but in a lot of great ways really came together as people. But if you knock down the Twin Towers and you choose to build a new tower, I think the obvious answer is 4 towers. Because if they want to do it again, it's double trouble. They got to hijack 2 more planes, and they have to do it in post 9/11 world. It's practically impossible. And in a lot of ways, I think the Freedom Tower is sheltered by that fact. But I also think that there is sort of a more the merrier thing. I think, what if instead of the 9/11 memorial, you just put up in like a circle just 6 new Twin Towers? Which is kind of an offensive play that's not a war. You know what I mean? Because right now, the 9/11 memorial is kind of, we're accepting that loss, you know what I mean? Which is healing for the country. But I also think 6 new towers is sort of a pretty American, like, fuck yeah, man. We just built 6 new towers on the ashes of innocent Americans, I went to the 9/11 memorial and I cried, and that was surprising because I am a 23-year-old born in 1999 from California, so me and 9/11 never really got to know each other. I never really was big when 9/11 was popular. when it was in its height, when it was really remembered, when it was not funny. When I became conscious of the world, 9/11 was funny. It was allowed to be funny. It was the funniest. Like, once you come to consciousness and the country's kind of healed from it, and you hear about 9/11, you're like, some guys just took planes and flew them into the building? Hilarious. Like, 2,000 people died, and you're like, yeah, 2,000? Like, what? When you're 10 in 2010 and you hear 2,000 people died, you're like, it's a pretty precocious 10-year-old to be, but you're like, a lot of people have died in the fucking Iraq War. I don't know. Is that a big deal? But yeah, I remember I always thought 9/11 was funny, which it's not. It's funny after you realize how fucking horrible it is. It's how funny things come from dark things, is you have to actually realize the severity of the thing that you somehow find funny in a very dark way. But I do remember being at the 9/11 memorial and just being like, oh no, this was a big deal. What got me is I looked at all the names, and it was just a bunch of men's names. And I was thinking of these guys as, because I'm a sexist, so that's how I relate to it now. But it was mostly men's names. I started seeing them. I assumed, they were probably adult men, probably usually over the age of 30, probably fathers. I saw all these men's names, and I was like, wow. It's not just them who died, it's families who died. You know what I mean? Just think of all the fathers who didn't come home that day. Think of all the children. Because all of these names, probably most people don't have one kid, so all this one guy's name means there could be 2 to 10 kids out there that just don't have a dad, and then that just multiplied by a bunch of other guys' fucking names that died that day. And you think about all the families that died, because it's not just the person that dies. It's everything that they built and was built around them that also dies. And something new comes from it, then you have a family with a single mother, and you have the memory of your father, and you're a new family now. But I'll tell you what, it's definitely not as good as it used to be, unless your father was just beating the brakes off the whole family, in which case that's got to be a confusing 9/11 for a kid, where your mom's like, Dad's not coming home, and you're like, oh no, oh, what are we gonna do? He was addicted to cocaine and would beat the shit out of me and never took me to practice. Oh no, drat. Oh, rats. Oh, paw, And if you're wondering if I am alleging that everybody that died in 9/11 was a domestic abuser, no. But there's got to be one, There's got to be a couple guys that were just absolute pieces of shit in there, But I don't know. There's probably also some guy that was like the first person in his family to make over $100,000 and was like the cornerstone of his entire family. You know what I mean? Wonder how many people became homeless off of 9/11. You know what I mean? Like, the family just falls in a disarray and the kids don't know how to deal with it, and they start using drugs, and there's no fucking money for after school programs and education. And the kids just kind of fall to the wayside, get into bad habits. I don't know. And that is the kind of cold observation that comes when you were not around to actually live through 9/11 and see the terror of it. I think I was sitting in a high chair, probably giggling. You know what I mean? I was a happy little baby. I was a happy little guy. I was quiet, not too rambunctious, but, I love to laugh, and I was a peaceful little guy, so I'm sure on the day of 9/11, I was just smiling with my little round cheeks, and my mom probably looked at me and said, well, thank God he's not at 9/11, that would really ruin my Tuesday. I think it was a Tuesday. Wasn't it Tuesday? Was it also Tuesday the stock market crashed? Was that called Black Tuesday in the Depression? God, Tuesdays are terrible for Wall Street. People died on both days. Both people jumped out of buildings on both days. They lost all their money and jumped out of a building. And then guys were about to be burned alive, so they jumped out of a building, which is two pretty different reasons for jumping out of a building. And I think people feel a lot less bad for the first guy. That's got to be crazy to hear that the stock market crashed and you're like a wife at home, in the when did the stock market crash? Like 35 or something? Yeah, you're like a wife at home at that point. And somebody's like, you hear the stock market crash? And you're like, oh no, that's really going to be terrible for my husband. He's going to lose money. And then the cops come to your house and you're like, he fucking killed himself? What the? We got a 4-bedroom. And I don't work. I got to go into a factory now? Is anybody going to help us? And they're like, no, nobody's going to help you. You got to get in a bread line. Yeah, I don't know. I wonder how much that happened. I wonder how much rich people at that time actually suffered. I feel like maybe back then in the 30s when the stock market crashed, rich people might have actually became truly poor people. But I think a lot of times they don't really become poor people. They lose some money and then they find other ways to make money and then they have a bunch of help because they're in an ecosystem of very rich people that help make them money. I don't know. I'll never have to worry about that because I'll never have money. I moved into the studio apartment and I think I might just kind of live here alone till I die. I don't know. I don't think anybody, I don't think I'll be able to actually build a good life. So it might just be in this apartment, which is spooky. Because it's like, I don't think I'm ever going to have as much money for a house. I don't think I could ever get a rich person to love me enough and live in a house. So sitting in this room, and it's a studio apartment, but it's a room. I could be looking at the end of my life, And I'm only 24, and that's scary. And I think that is the kind of perspective that you get from a person that wants to kill themselves. And I think what I said is kind of neat, So once again, we go back to the point. If you want to blow your brains out, think about some of the things you think, because maybe they could make a good poem or a song. Or maybe you're very good at building Legos and you don't even know it, Interesting. There's a lot of people online that are like, 3 years ago, I was on the verge of suicide. I was doing cocaine every single day and having anonymous sex with people I didn't care about. And then I discovered Roblox. Since then, I've been streaming on Twitch, playing Roblox, and I have found true success, fulfillment, and happiness, And I think I don't have that in my body to not, you know what I mean? Like, people that are like, I started making rugs and it stopped me from wanting to kill myself. I think I'm too much of an asshole for that to save my life. Like, I think the thing that would save me from killing myself is like $20 million. And even then, I still need everybody to like me. And when you have $20 million, I don't know if anybody likes you. Like, even if you get it from being a famous comedian, it's like, yeah, but people don't like you. Because you have $20 million from doing stand-up. So why would anyone like you? It's not likable at all, And I grew up comfortable enough to know that money doesn't immediately make you happy. Like, we were never a rich family, but we were comfortable. Like, there was food. And it's weird because you learn, like, you can learn gratitude from that, but you can also learn that safety and security, you can still just want to fucking blow your brains out, even if you have it, which is the darkest thing in the world. You know what I mean? Like, I think, like, the day I get a $10 million check, which will never happen, but hypothetically, the day I get a $10 million check is the day that I kill myself. You know what I mean? I think there must be, it seems like there's just so sad to look at a check and it says $10 million, and now you're kind of released from, like, financial chains. Because I think it really crushes people, because you get $10 million and then you go, fuck, So now my job is just to like be happy and grateful. Before that, I had a goal, make money and be comfortable and live a good life. And now I can. And so now I have to do the harder part, which is living a good life. And everybody thinks the hard part is making all that money, which it's practically impossible. So you're not wrong. But I think an even harder part is making all that money and then being like, all right, I'm happy every day now. Like that math doesn't work for me. Because I know if I get a $10 million check and I don't kill myself and I wake up the next day, I'm not going to wake up and be like, yay! And I think I'll wake up and be like, fuck. It's fucking noon. I should have got up earlier. Now I gotta get up and do shit. If I don't go for a run, I'm gonna get fat. And then I gotta fucking go to the market. And then you're like, I guess I can get somebody to go to the market for me. But then you're like, but then if I don't go to the market, am I really even participating in life at this point? Am I just paying people to live life for me? Did I make all of this money to make jobs that are essentially the life I should be living? Are all these assistants and maids and butlers and personal chefs, are they all just doing all the things that I am supposed to be doing as a person on Earth? And with all that time that I get from all that money I spend, is all that free time, what am I supposed to use it for? To be amazing? To write the best stand-up ever? How am I going to write the best stand-up ever when I don't have anything to talk about? I haven't cooked a meal in 6 months. I haven't brought groceries in 7. I haven't been anywhere. I haven't done anything. So what the hell? What am I supposed to do now? You know? It's an interesting position because, you could be like a lady in a war-torn country whose entire family was just murdered, and you look around and you go, what do I do now? Everything, And then you look around, and then you're a guy with $20 million, and you look around and you go, well, what do I do now? And it's like, well, nothing, I guess, It could be nothing. But I guess the answer is you have to fucking live an awesome, like you kind of have to. Sort of like great power comes great responsibility. Like a huge amount of money, it is now your responsibility to go to Ibiza and like get a penthouse and go, you know what I mean? Like you almost have to. It's like, well, you have to now because you can, because you worked for it, because you're part of the people that can do that, and not everybody can. So if you don't, you're kind of an asshole. You know what I mean? That's what I think. I mean, I think it's a common consensus now that if you have a lot of money, you like have to spend a lot of money. And you should give away a lot of it to like charity and stuff, but also you should spend it on yourself to live a good life, because nothing pisses me off more than like, I think it's Warren Buffett who is hopefully dead, but no, he's not dead, because he's that fucking asshole that's like, I'm going to give all my money away when I'm dead. And it's like, just give it away now, you dickhead. Because he lives in the same house he's lived in since like 1960, which is like, it's like a nice like 2-story colonial or whatever. Which I'm fine. If you don't want a huge house, that's totally fine. But he's also like, I eat McDonald's every day, and it's just like, actually, now the more I talk about this guy, he kind of fucking rules. He is just doing literally whatever he wants, which is sick. But it's also like, are you going to nice dinners though? Like, are you doing the stuff? Which he probably is, which I guess is the annoying part about that narrative, that it's like Warren Buffett is just like everybody else. But it's like, no, he's a billionaire with an awesome life who also eats McDonald's sometimes, but he also can eat the greatest caviar in the world. You know what I mean? I don't know. It must be such a weird kind of boredom being rich when you have all the options, in the world. Where you're like, should I fly to Italy tonight for dinner? Like, I guess I should do that. Because if I go to McDonald's, it's kind of like, what the hell did I make all that money for? Then you're just kind of stuck. I don't know what you're going to do. I don't know. So, I mean, this podcast is, a lot of guys, we were talking about earlier, like these alpha male bearded entrepreneur types. They're always like, you got to make $1 million by the time you're 20 or you're a loser. I might attest that if you make $1 million by the time you're 20, you kind of are a loser. Because it's like, all right, once you make enough to live the rest of your life, which $1 million, but if you make $1 million by your 20, you'll probably have, 5 by the time you're 25, You make all that money, then it's like, shit, you stupid rich loser, you're not interesting anymore, You're not like a young Paul Simon walking around New York with beautiful thoughts and songs rushing through your head. You're just a rich guy now, You're practically already dead, extravagant wealth is really just the death of an individual, You sort of just become a representative of the opulence, It's just now just kind of your job to eat steak dinners and do things that people tell you are good, and buy the medals that people tell you are precious and hoard the art that people tell you is the best, I'm sure you don't see a lot of billionaires, with like underground artist paintings in their house. You know what I mean? I'm sure there's not like, hey, this is just something I saw in a coffee shop, just a young guy I really liked, and I bought it, and I really liked it. I don't think they do that. You know what I mean? I think they're like, yeah, I got a buddy over at the Guggenheim. He said I could just take this one home. I don't get it, but it looks good. You know what I mean? You just kind of become part of like a loser team, But then it's like people with nothing. It's like, well, you really got to make your own fun, You got to make your own thing. So you become, you're a more creative, kind of interesting person. You know what I mean? The stuff crackheads are doing on the streets of Los Angeles are just transcendent in their originality and artistic prowess and bravery. You know what I mean? How do you have fun? Oh, I like to fly to Monaco and watch the F1 race. How do you have fun? I like to take my dick out in the street, and nobody stops me because there's too much going on in this city. The second guy is very interesting. He has more to say about stuff. Is he correct? I don't know, but he has a lot to say about things. I don't know. I saw a nice situation the other day. It was a white lady walking a large, fancy-looking dog down the street in East Hollywood, and she was stopped talking to a homeless man. I'm sure because when she passed, the homeless guy said, "Hey, look at the dog," and then she's a rich white lady, and she didn't want to go, "Get away from my dog." She wanted to seem like she was a good person, so she had to stop. And it was nice because the dog walked up to the homeless guy who was sitting on the stairs of a school and kind of stood by him. And then the dog did the nice little turn the side of his body to the homeless guy as if to say, "I like this guy." And then the homeless guy started petting him, and the dog was just like, And it reminds me of that Louis C.K. joke of like how dogs are so dumb, they never know what's going on. Like you can be telling your kids that grandma died and the dog's just on the couch. Like, it's a great joke. It's on one of his newer specials. I think it's in Sorry or Sincerely. But that exact situation reminded me of it because it's like she is stopping to talk, to this homeless guy because I'm sure she would feel bad not to. And now the dog is just getting pet by it. And she's like, fuck, I gotta wash this dog, because deep down, she's still not a great person, But the dog's just sitting there like, I like this guy. Outside guy, I like that. I like being outside. He's outside a lot. I like that. I can tell he's got good musk to him. This is really a cool guy. Who is this guy? Is he a friend of ours? Is he coming, And then he pets the dog, and the lady goes, "Okay, tug on the leash. Come on. Nice to see you, sir." They walk away, and then the dog's like, "Is he coming or what? Don't we like that guy? You just stopped to talk to that guy. Why don't we... What's going on with that guy? Are we going back or what? I liked him a lot." It really sucks, A lot of rich white ladies now. It's like you got to pick a side. Are you either the one that's still like clutching pearls, like, "Unhand him," Are you still doing that? Or are you the one that's like, "You are the most amazing person I've ever met," to just a man who's currently overdosing on fentanyl? What side do you choose? it's tough. Because the first side, Clutch and Pearls, you got videotaped, you know? People videotape you for that now. If you walk around and you're rich and you're like, hey, I'm fucking rich, get away from me, people just start filming, you know? In the old days when you were rich, it was almost like being a cop where you just like put up your badge of a diamond and you're like, see this? You can't touch me. Get away from me. You know, like being rich, you know, I think like coming out of like, you know, feudal governments or whatever, you know, being rich really used to mean you ruled everybody. But now there's so many rich people that, you know, in a way rule people, but really only a few of them really rule people. The rest of them just are rich. So now they're in a weird position where they're not like the deciders of many things anymore. They're just sort of the biggest consumers, which in that way gives them power in the market because, you know, whoever can consume the most, you know, own the most has the most power. But still, you know, you're not a king, you know. So you're either some old woman like, stop asking about my watch. Get away from me. You know, and then some guy's like, look at this old bitch. Look at this old bitch. And then 2 weeks later, your boss at Merrill Lynch is like, hey, were you racist 2 weeks ago? And you're like, what? Never. And then you get shown a video and then you lose your job, you know, which is fine because you got a 401k and you already made $20 million. So it'll be okay. But, you know. And on the other side, everybody you talk to, you have to be like, hi, how are you? So good to meet you. Hello. And those are the kind of millionaires that you get, you know, usually on the east side of LA, you know. Not like real, like East LA, not like fucking Boyle Heights and Whittier, you know what I mean? All those white people are still too scared to live there. But like Echo Park, Silver Lake, parts of East Hollywood, Beechwood Canyon, stuff like that. Those white rich people whose ancestors probably did the same horrible things that the evil ones did, they have to walk around and be like, I love being a part of my community. It's an interesting way to use wealth because now so many communities, which used to just be regular communities, usually belonging to like Mexican and South American people in LA, now they are so expensive and they belong to super rich people because it would cost like $5 million to buy like a 3-bedroom craftsman home in Echo Park. You know what I mean? So you're like paying millions of dollars to just look like a normal family in a movie. Like if a family had a house in a movie, that's where you live. But you have to be like the son of Lockheed or Martin to live there, you know? And it's weird because then you're just kind of playing pretend. Then you're like, I'm a normal person. You have to walk around and be like, everyone's wonderful. It's like if you have that much money, you might as well just move to Beverly Hills where you can just be the evil scum you are, you know, and just sit with bigwigs and be like, isn't it great that they can't get in here? And they is not even one race. It's just everybody without the money, you know? Even a white guy in a shirt from Target, they're like, get out of it, you know, like even that. That's what, you know, it's what those people should be doing. They might as well, because they're not fixing anything by taking away homes from fucking poor people, you know what I mean? So they might as well just fucking live with the rich in their little enclaves because they're going to anyway, you know what I mean? We need, you know, communities with diversity are great, but that's also not what happens. It's just a bunch of rich white people moving into a place that used to have a lot of diversity and then making it just a bunch of white people, you know what I mean? And even if the old communities weren't technically diverse, even if it was all just one race, they at least, you know, they were there for a reason. They had a history there. They had more fun. Now it's just a bunch of people being like, let's move into a community and then start the worst pizza shop in the world where we make lavender pizza. That's what we get a lot of now. And that's not so good. It doesn't inspire people, you know? I don't know, you know, but hey, you know, it's good to be back. I've been wasting a lot of time not doing this podcast, you know, been watching documentaries, one after the other. I've been watching a lot of this guy recently, John Boyce and Alex Rubinstein, I think is their names. They make really good documentaries about just the entire history of NFL teams. And it just goes through just with tons of statistics and these really interesting graphics, like these 3D movable graphics that they make. And they just tell you about how long somebody has sucked and why they've sucked. And it's really interesting. And I'm watching the history of the Vikings, and it's funny because we're in the early stages of like this 5-7 part YouTube documentary. So it's really in depth, and it's really way far back. And it's so funny the amount of athletes that just were like the guy, I think it's Bud Grant, played for the Lakers, and then I think also played for the Steelers or another NFL team. Not NFL, but professional football team. And then also played as a pitcher in the MLB. And he was just good at all of them. And it's just one of those things where it's like sports or even comedy now, where it's just like, did only 5 people even try to do this back then? Or why was it so just a thing you could do? Why is that so accessible for everybody? It's so odd. I don't get it. But Bud Grant is the man. If you want to learn more about him, John Boyce and Alex Rubinstein, they're putting out great documentaries. And that's what I like to do at the end of the episode. I go, hey, if you liked what I talked about, here's something else you can listen to. And it's a lot better quality and more well done, and you will learn more and gain more from hearing about it. But anyway, I think this is going to be released on like a Saturday or Sunday. I'm thinking of releasing it on one of those days because everybody loves the weekend. And I don't know, just going to change the day. Why not? See how it works. If you guys like it or don't like it, let me know. But if you came back to listen to this podcast after it had been away for a month and a half, and I know for a fact it's nobody's favorite podcast. So if you're here right now listening to it, and you even made it to the end of the episode, thank you so much. Because whoever you are the reason that I do this. Not the reason I'm alive. That is, of course, John Candy and his legacy. But you're the reason I continue doing this podcast. And I thank you so much for listening. And I hope you all have a beautiful day. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.